There's a fantastic opportunity for the UK to revitalise its most wild and beautiful landscapes, our national parks. And you, yes you, can play a part in doing just that. And in this video, we'll explore how. We'll understand their history, how they've got to where they are today, and also look at some of the great rewilding efforts that are currently unfolding. And here at Live Curious, we are curious about nature, so if you are too, consider subscribing. Why is there a need to rewild our national parks and our ANOBs, our areas of outstanding natural beauty? Our national parks really should be lands that are thriving with life, and in many there are pockets, areas which are exceptional, beautiful and wild, but there are many large expanses that aren't living up to their potential. The reasons for why are complicated, but they all stem from the same root. Ever since the farming culture first landed in Britain, we've slowly but surely been altering our landscapes to support ourselves, clearing natural landscapes for farmland, dissecting great oaks for construction, and eradicating animals out of spite and sport. Over the past century, as the population has grown, this shifting in land use has accelerated, and although protected, our national parks have suffered. Generations ago, my great-grandfather would have gone for a walk, and the environment, the landscapes that he would have seen would have been vastly different to the ones that we see. You can bet that they would have been much more natural and much more wild. And to him, this would have been the norm. This would have been his baseline. And our baseline today, what we know as acceptable and what we understand, is probably far worse. There's a lot more cars, there's a lot more cables, there's a lot more carbon, and just general crap around. This is otherwise known as the shifting baseline syndrome, and I actually think that sounds quite negative, like something's wrong, but what it's actually showing is that between different generations, different time periods, what is considered the norm changes. But sadly, with respect to our environment, things are getting worse. It's on a downward trend, and what we see today, we really just cannot accept as the norm. We have to start thinking about our landscapes on a much broader timescale. But it's also important to understand that we cannot replicate what our ancestors have seen, the way the land was back then. That's in the past, we can't go back. The key thing is, what we have to try and do is ensure that that baseline, that trend shifts to a more positive pattern for future generations. 30% of our national parks are directly dedicated to agriculture, with the majority being pasture and grazing lands for animals like sheep and cows. Intensive grazing, where large numbers of animals live upon the same lands, is bad for the environment, halting the succession of plant life and the evolution of the landscape. So just 14% of our national parks are woodland. And when you consider that half of that is planted conifers by man for timber production, which is extremely regimented, closed canopy woodland with no ground flora, and when you look at the slow rate of naturally regenerating woodlands in the UK, the problem only seems to be getting worse. Heathland and moors make up 22% of our national parks, but many of these are primarily managed for grouse hunting, which may be culturally significant, yet to maintain this activity, it means regular interference through burning, clearing and grazing of these lands. Peatland makes up 12% of our parks and is one of the world's rarest habitats and carbon-rich habitats, and we know how important that is today, but only around 20% of this has been left untouched by humans. And around 15% of our national parks are unimproved or semi-improved grasslands. 75% of SSSIs within our national parks are in an unfavourable condition. Many of these sites were designated for their rarity in an otherwise fragmented landscape. Frequently it's been traditional conservation that seek to preserve these areas as they are, often for only one or two species. We know now that truly productive and self-regulating ecosystems are reliant on a mosaic of biodiversity, plants and animals, all complementing each other, creating a landscape that is greater than the sum of its parts. We are of course talking about rewilding and landscape scale restoration, and currently there are some brilliant efforts unfolding in our national parks. So what's currently being done to make them better? Well, unfortunately in this video we just don't have time to go through each and every project, organisation and person that is working to enrich our national parks, but we can go through a few of them to get us excited. The Ingleborough National Nature Reserve within the Yorkshire Dales has lifted grazing pressures along with supplementary tree planting, which has helped the natural regeneration of its forests. Mar Lodge within the heart of the Cairngorms is a 30,000 hectare site. Its forests have been subjected to sheep, but also wild deer grazing. Relieving these pressures, particularly through culling, has been a success. The old granny pines are now in much younger company as the pine woods begin to regenerate, establishing the natural tree line upon the mountains. Peatland restoration is also underway across our national parks. At Benshaw Moor, on the edge of the Northumberland National Park, the Wildlife Trust has been working over the past couple of years to retain the moisture within peat bogs through a process called grit blocking, which is effectively building dams from the existing peat. There has also been the expansion of rewilding networks. Wild Peak is a network of landowners, big and small, communities and organisations working together to make the Peak District a wilder place. And it's these networks which are so valuable because they help tie together all of the efforts, which ultimately creates better connectivity and opportunities for all within national parks. So what more can be done? Well, working together is key. It's outlined as a priority at the start of the Glover Review, which is an independent report that looked at the state of our ANOBs and national parks. Fundamentally, working together is all about having a shared vision and a shared goal that all national parks can work towards. The Glover Review identified the need for this and have called for ANOBs and national parks to come together within one family of national landscapes served by a shared national landscape service. The report continues that each place should have its own identity within the family, which will be crucial to maintaining and adopting new cultures and beliefs. So for the cultural aspects and for the different communities that visit our national parks, these areas need new and modern approaches too. The Mene survey looked at who uses national parks and why. It found that ethnic minorities, deprived communities and young people visited national parks the least. Reasons being cultural stigma, assumptions, expectations, lack of interest, understanding and accessibility. If national parks are to be a success for people, their ecological and environmental visions should align as much as their inclusion and their accessibility to all UK citizens. Nature is for everyone and everyone should feel comfortable within it, and anything less than that is unacceptable. What is the government currently doing and planning to do to empower national parks? The government is yet to respond in full to the Glover Review and really deliver ambitious actions for change. They have committed to extending 2 existing ANOBs as well as proposals to extend a further 2. But when you consider that there are 44 ANOBs in the country, extending 2 just doesn't really seem like much of a statement, falling short of the Glover Review's proposals to unite all national landscapes in the UK. A new scheme called Farming in Protected Landscapes has been announced and will help landowners lay green foundations on their lands before the UK fully transitions to the ELM scheme in 2024. And in the present moment, ELM is still only within a pilot phase, and our national parks, although doing some great work, are still sitting underpowered. The government really must do more. Not only will this benefit the environment, it will benefit people too, the economy, our well-being, and it will help fight climate change. And at the end of it all, if our national parks really aren't the most beautiful and wild places in the country, then where will be? So how can you play your part in all of this? The first thing you can do is to sign the petition for wilder national parks. It's nearly at 35,000 signatures, so get your name down. In addition, you should write to your local MP. If enough people do it time and time again and the words rewilding and national parks keep coming up, it will make a difference. And as we found out, working together is going to be key to success, so you should really try and get involved. You can do this in so many different ways, from volunteering at projects in your nearest national park. You can join a network such as the Wild Peak, or the one in my area is called Wild East. You can use your skills or expertise to help share important messages and stories. If you're an artist, a communicator, an academic, get out there, begin creating or conducting research to help move us forward to wilder national parks for everyone. And lastly, you can support Leave Curious. It'd be really great if you could do some of the free stuff like liking, commenting, sharing and subscribing to the channel. But if you want to gain access to exclusive content, you can over on Patreon. And if you want to get a sustainably made t-shirt, then you can also do that as well. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching. Leave Curious.